So, Douglas, lately, as you know, on Gab and probably some places on the Cat Report, I've been posting videos from Suspicious Observers and Diebold Foundation, where there are discussions with scientific evidence to show that the Earth is due major shifts in the way that we rotate, or the poles are shifting. It's an assortment of everything. And I don't want to be fear mongering, because I see that there is something really special that could be happening here. And that's what I want to explore today. The thing that interested me was that species are known to change, mutate, and become something else during these cosmic events. And I'm wondering if this is a point, a place where we might, as humans, begin to experience what ascension is.
Well, that's a very good question that deserves a very good answer. I just hope I have one. No, I do. But, I'm like other people. I get kind of caught up in all the details. For instance, I love Ben Davidson, and I've been watching Suspicious Observers. I've had them up there check, and also watching the solar flares and watching the sun for a long, long, long time. Had a great interest in it because I've always known that all life comes from the sun. And if you don't give it its due respect, then you're just silly. And all the climate change, no, that's not climate change. That's called the rhythmic cycles of the sun.
You don't need to insult our group. They know that.
Okay.
All
right. Sorry for insulting you. Okay. All you sun worshipers out there, remember this. No matter what the statistics say, tough luck. The being of the sun is Christ, the solar logos. He works through the combined 7 Elohim, one of them being the Elohim Jehovah of the moon, and then the other 6 planetary, and then the sun. But Christ works through them. And that's only one. That's the way Christ manifests in this realm, kind of like the shadow of Christ. So if you don't think that Christ has the power, as now the Lord of Karma, to change whether the sun hiccups or belches or backfires, then you don't understand the way that it really is cosmically. But again, we know very little in terms of the scientists. When I say we, that would be the secular humanist, materialist, a mythic superstition science, which is being supplanted every single day. So as we look at these statistics, you can see that some people literally say every 12,068 years, there's a gigantic, basically ice age. Well, that's somewhat true, but sometimes it doesn't. And so they have cycles within cycles within cycles. It's not as simple as some people like to make it, because as you look at the Earth and the sun and the dynamic relationship, they've just found out that we're being pulled behind the sun with magnetic ropes. Okay, they just discovered that. We know very little. Well, why didn't they just go back to mythology where they describe these things? Why didn't they just go back to ancient religions where they give great descriptions and even give the nature, in some cases anthropomorphic, but in other cases they give beingness to these forces? So what are we going to do with them? Are we really going to have between 2030 and 2040 a gigantic polar shift? Now, here's the deal. They need to make a distinction between the axis changing and the geomagnetic forces of the Earth changing. A magnetic excursion from the south and north of the Earth, from the geomagnetic north and south pole that meets somewhere near the equator. Well, that's what the sun does every 11 or 22 years. In its normal cycle, the sun, the north and south pole, migrates, and the geomagnetic influences of the sun. And what is that? That's a breathing process. It's nothing unnatural. It's like saying, oh, night is unnatural because it's dark. Well, is day then the only? No, there's always day and there's night. So the breathing processes of the sun demonstrated that just in the last 10 years or so, we had a great magnetic anomaly on the sun. And what was that? That was that it came, the north and south poles of the sun came to the equator, got kind of stuck there, and they wondered what was going to happen. And then they both migrated back to the South Pole, I believe it was. And then they were totally freaked out. They thought this was going to be the end. And then they debated, oh, shall we tell the normal plebes out there? Shall we tell the population that the end is here? because, this what happens on the sun happens to the earth. I mean, we are a subsidiary of the sun. So what happened? It stayed down there for a while. They freaked out. It stayed down there for quite a while. I don't remember exactly how long, but then it started to migrate back. One of the two poles migrated back to the equator, then back to the north, and it's fine. And then the next cycle was fine.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of different scenarios of what might occur. And that's not really what I care about in this particular discussion, because people can listen to these videos by these two channels, and there are more. I am more interested in what is going on spiritually, because when you can understand that the sun is just not a physical orb out there, that there is a connection spiritually that we have with the sun, whether it's SUN or SON. What are the things that we can do as evolved spiritual beings having these human experiences to change or alter what could be, some pretty bad scenarios on Earth? I believe that we collectively, humanity, the awake of humanity, can alter these events.
The human soul realm creates weather. The human spirit realm creates solar weather. And so if you want to talk about a relative or absolute view on this, okay, you could either say right now we are having the apocalypse, or the apocalypse is basically planned to happen in about 6,000 years from now. So let's say that it's happening right now. Well, it's going to be the same thing. What happens? There's a judgment. Oh, did we not just have a judgment with the pandemic?
No, we see judgment all around us.
Yes.
Everything that we are seeing unfolding right now is like watching a building collapse, civilization collapsing, and you see debris in the field. Over here, you have FBI in Mar-a-Lago, and over here, you've got, Ben Davidson telling us that the world isn't going to last much longer. You've got drama all over the field. It's all falling apart. And when I look at that, what I see manifested is God's judgment. And it's breathtaking. It's overwhelming, because each individual and their individual circumstances is receiving judgment now.
Cataclysmic thinking is okay as long as it's not joined together with alarmism. But at this point, it looks like alarmism may be, in fact, the appropriate response, because we're not only seeing the merging of a variety of cycles in a 12,000-year cycle, because Atlantis went down, and we know that by looking at the stone structures and what they were pointing at as their star constellations in the sky, by spinning them backwards in time and seeing that they had, even though they weren't built in 10,500 BC, all the major megalithic structures all point to that date. So what was that? That was the sinking of Atlantis. And now, 12,500 years later or thereabouts, where at the time that it's, in fact, some would say we're 500 years late.
Maybe that's because of the spiritual awakening that's going on in the world is pushing it back.
The seers of Fatima told the priest that had those private conversations that in 1996, I believe it was, that the sun would blink out for 3 days and you needed to go to your basement. Don't come outside because you'll be entranced, hypnotized to come outside to look at the sky. And don't let anybody come in, because if they're coming in, even if they're your own relatives, they're bringing in what they're insinuating is some type of radiation or poisoning. Well, yes, there's now proof that the stars aligned with us, headed towards the center of our galaxy, on what's called the galactic current sheet. In other words, when you cross the midpoint of the plate-like structure of the galaxy, that's where we're at. We're at the midpoint. And it takes 25,920 years to go up and down back to a full cycle. So every time you go up and down, that's 12,000 years. Go down and up to the middle, 12,000. We're at that point. Yes, we're at that point.
And we know this because we even put that in our Gospel of Sophia trilogy way back in 2014 and 15. We were discussing this.
That's why we went to the North Pole, so that we could attempt to put spiritual energy into what comes in at the North Pole and what goes out at the North Pole, which is a whole other talk. But we did that on purpose. And that was because these are the same forces we're working with now.
Was when Douglas and I went up to Chena Hot Springs, December December 21st, 2012, but it was the end of the Mayan calendar and a new calendar period. And we wanted to be there for that. And these are the reasons why. Sorry to interrupt, but not everybody's familiar with that story.
Because when you're within the ring of the Aurora Borealis up near the Arctic Circle, every single night it comes over your head and you are entering into this magical zone, the crown of the earth. The Aurora Australis is the opposite image of that. But the point is then you're directly in contact with these ropes, magnetic ropes that come to the earth and feed the earth, not only magnetic energy, but all kinds of spiritual energy from the sun. And of course, there's other energies from the sun that are not so good. Then there's energies from the cosmos, and that's the ones that we're dealing with right now. So as the sun goes through two cycles, one where there's no sunspots and no solar flares, and that's called a solar minimum, or when there's a bunch of them, called a solar maximum. We were at a 284-year Maunder minimum until recently. We started seeing a bunch of sunspots and solar flares. So guess what? The ice age ain't coming.
And so perhaps that was the awakening of humans on Earth sending that vibration, that frequency to the solar realm that changed the course of this ice age.
And what supposedly the Holy Mother Mary told the Fatima visionary is exactly what you would do if you believed that you were having a mini nova. And so as you look back at the stars between here and the center of our galaxy, all those stars, they have had mini novas. Mini novas are common. And dust clouds or dust shell being spit out by the sun will make it look like the sun is blanked out for 3 days. And that would probably usually happen when there is a low magnetism, or we call Van Allen belts, or the geomagnetic sheath of the earth. And that's what's happening right now. We're 70% depleted. It's the lowest it's ever been. There's gigantic magnetic holes, like black holes for magnetism all over the earth right now. And when this all happens, if there is a magnetic shift, then there could be and will be great Aurora Borealis ionization processes happening all over the earth that would probably blind you if you looked at it, or if you were exposed to it, irradiate you, because there will be nothing to protect you from cosmic radiation and nothing to protect you from the Earth's reaction to what the sun just did. Now, if the sun goes into a mini nova, and it's happened before, according to some people, they say multiple times, but let's just they call it a Carrington event. Let's call it the 12,000-year event. And then there's the 25,920-year event. That's bigger. Are we at that point? I don't think so. I believe that's the top and the bottom of the spectrum. I believe we're in the middle. So this is when you have to have the imagination to realize that Lemuria sank by fire, and many of the people couldn't live there because the fiery nature of Lemuria was too intense for them, so they lived out on the planets. That whole entire continent sank.
And when you say that, this really takes the listener's imagination. Remember that we operate on many levels. We have a physical body, we have an etheric and astral body, and ego. We have these different bodies. So when Douglas says that the Lemurians at the time fled to other planets, well, first of all, the Lemurians didn't have a physical body the way we would see it and know it today. So them retreating to another planet is just a whole different kind of imagination. You have to clarify that.
That's true.
Yeah. Now, I have you have to stop right here.
But then the moon came out at the same time. So
when the moon came out from the earth.
From the earth.
And we had to do that. We had to pull that density out of the earth so we could evolve.
And Lemuria sank.
Okay.
And that was from fire. That was the fire destruction of the earth. This happens on a periodic timetable. We shouldn't be surprised. Atlantis sunk. And when it sunk, it was a water disaster. Now we're in the time what's called post-Atlantean, and it's an air disaster. But what happens if we just literally say, okay, the apocalypse is right? Those who are holy after the judgment and are separated, they get to wear the white gown, sing the eternal song, and preach the eternal gospel.
Don't forget the glorified body. Because I want a new body in this new existence.
That's the white gown. That's your glorified body. You rise up into the air. You recognize the new king, who is the lion who has married the bride. and you go, and they say you go around the throne. You like hide under the throne, and you're protected from the dragon and the seven-headed beast and all the horrible stuff. And they're cast into the lakes of fire and so on and so forth. But remember, it says for 1,000 years, those people get to reign. Okay, well, how could that happen on the earth? Only way I can see is that, as Rudolf Steiner said, when the Kali Yuga was started in basically 3000 BC, goes for 5,000 years till 2000 AD, it was so dark that at the beginning of it, humanity all over the earth, all simultaneously, and he doesn't explain how this happened, fell to the ground. And after a few days and after a while, 1/3 of them got up and lived. The others all did not get up and live. And so he's describing a cataclysm. And then what happens? And then he makes reference to this. And we all know the megalithic age started all over the world. Whoever built the greatest stone structures, which we can't even replicate today, and we don't know how they built them, and they're related to what? The precession of the equinoxes. It's written into the stone, as well as the 25,920-year cycle, or sometimes 960-year cycle. But the point is you look in the sky, you see it. It's the timetable. You're proving your intelligence by instead of a time capsule, this is a time temple. And it's telling the people of the future, beware. Many ice ages come on, and you better beware, because we do know these ice ages happen. We know through paleomagnetism when these things happen. But now here's the bottom line. We're at the end of all of these cycles. They all came together just like they did on the time Tyler was talking about when we went to the north. They've come together now, and we're beginning to see that the sun, if it's awakening, we don't know what the sun's going to do, but it is not normal. Our geomagnetic response to the sun is the most dramatic that we've ever seen in recorded human history, except for looking at, stones and burnt rocks and these glass beads that appear all around because of why? Because of a mini nova.
Like they're playing a whole nother different glass bead game. Now, Bubble Down, let me ask you some stuff, some topics here. At the end of the Atlantean period, of course, we have this great flood. And when I'm watching Suspicious Observers and Diebold Foundation, and by the way, I do have a problem with him because he keeps talking about the rocks they found on the moon. I'm like, hello, where are you? You live under a rock, if that's what you think. All right, but that hasn't been said. Go back to this. At the time of the flood, when Noah comes out, there's a rainbow, and it says, go read it in the Bible. God made a covenant with all of us, all of humanity, and said he would not destroy the earth by a flood like this ever again. So when I see these scenarios that we have this great flood and freezing, I'm like, hey, God, don't forget you have a covenant with us. No floods. Is that enough to stop it?
Well, yes. And when you're talking about Atlantis going down, they got on ships. And then we're told that all over the world, these ships came out of the air. And they came out of the air, out of the cosmos. And they would land all over the earth. And they were these different colored beings that were like ancient beings. And then what did they do? They conquered wherever they went. Well, in The Lord of the Rings, which I just love it, what happens to the Numenorians, who actually learn from the elves, which are their angels, because the elves are eternal. When the Numenorians, some of the Numenorians are good people, they're able to go to the west, and they live in a sacred space removed from everywhere that you can't get to. No matter how much you can sail, how good of a sailor you are, you can't get to that land. It's called the land of the Blessed Isles, or Tor Teresa, Edessa. But then they sail further to the west, and what do? They sail right off the water into the light, into the sky, and into the stars. That's our destiny. That is where we will all go. Now, will it happen quickly now? That is possible. That is possible.
But we can all feel and understand that maybe the only way to clear up the corruption that we see, it's so vast. It's beyond your imagination, is that many of us are wishing for a flood to come and take this out. So let's go back to some of the research you've been doing about the photons and the light in the cells. Don't start yet. I'm not finished framing it. And you've got maybe a solar activity. Perhaps that sets off something that stimulates or changes our DNA so that we become these light beings and begin our evolution. Because, as it said many times, that different species can arise during these times of solar activity. So talk to me about that, because then we can see that the vaccinated have put something in their blood to darken those light photons, the graphene oxide, so they won't be possible to make this ascension.
Yeah. In all these traditions, it's the boat of the spirit. Even if you're an Egyptian and you got a pyramid built for you, when you go to the spiritual world, you need a boat. What's the boat? That's the light that's in you. That's the light that's in every cell in your body. And what
is that? The oil in the lamp?
That's the oil in the lamp. That's the fire that's enkindled. That's the flame of fire that's as large as your thumb in between your heart and your lungs. There's 1,000 descriptions for it and 1,000 different beliefs, because a clairvoyant can see these things. How you describe it has to do with the language and your culture. But anyway, yes, there is a war of light and dark going on right now. Graphene in your body is darkness eating the light, and it's destroying your DNA. What else destroys your DNA? Well, that would be ultraviolet, X-ray, gamma, and other cosmic waves or rays. And they come in and they destroy your DNA and they rewrite it. Now, who's to say what it will rewrite it to? They know that they can splice DNA with ultraviolet light. But they also know that if they give it a different type of light, infrared light, which is below what we can see, the lights I just described, or above what we can see in the normal human spectrum, below what they call blue light, anything below the human spectrum, that is infrared. And they know that infrared can heal. They know that those frequencies can heal your telomeres. They know that they can heal your DNA. Do they do that for us? No. They put up in England light-emitting diode street lamps that work on a terahertz level, which basically is going to kill you just being exposed to it. And what it does to your mind is ridiculous. For a child, it will strip the melatonin from their pineal gland as quick as you can possibly imagine. And we knew that with the mercury lights. We knew it with all those fake lights, those gas lights, or now these stupid LED lights, or of course, we have 5G and they're going to 6G immediately. They can't hold themselves back from creating the darkness of subnature with all these mechanical devices. So on the other end, what's the opposite of that? People who develop their light bodies have created a boat. In Tibetan Buddhism, you're either in the big boat or the small boat, but it's a boat. You have to get in the boat, and what are you going to do? You're going to sail into a rarefied atmosphere. Now, where's that rarefied atmosphere? Well, obviously, someplace not on the earth.
Ooh, it sounds like the mists of Avalon.
It is. This is, people think that I'm crazy. You are going to turn.
Van Morrison has a great tune.
Into the Mystic.
Yes.
Yeah, that one, or
we love that anytime
that
comes on.
Or the
we're just like, yes, there's our song.
He talks about this a lot. Wait, let's talk about the traditions. Any tradition I know of, certain really highly spiritually developed beings quickly evolve by doing what? Someone, usually in the tradition I like the best, Vajrayogini comes to you, grabs you, and flies into the sky with you. That's your reward. You don't even die. You just go right into this ascension body, straight into the sky. This has happened many times where they write it down. And you'd think that after a while you'd say, these people are nuts. This is a cartoon. No, many of them, right before their disciples, this is how they prove themselves. And that's why it's so beautiful. Tibetan Buddhism, if they're a geisha or a lama or a rinpoche, they're clairvoyant. And they only get there because other clairvoyants checked out their clairvoyance. So a great master literally dissolves right before his people. He turns into a light body, a rainbow body, and ascends and leaves not even ashes. Or sometimes they turn into ashes. Sometimes they turn into flames, the spontaneous human combustion. These aren't myths. This isn't a conspiracy. These things happen. We have the capacity. Those are people who speed up the capacity. But what happens if the axis changes, the spin of the earth changes, the geomagnetic excursion goes into some weird thing. Could it be that humans then would be able to levitate after that if they had developed their DNA with their light body?
We don't know, but it's
Possibly.
But when you look at Revelation and you look at what happens after the tribulation, are we living in those days right now? And will this sun activity actually stimulate something in us that we become a light body? But what I wanted to say, go back a little bit about this consciousness. If you have consciousness at your death and you make that transition in consciousness and you do that over and over again, then isn't that immortality?
It is.
Because once you are aware that you're an immortal being, you have it.
If you could go high enough in the atmosphere, there'd be no night. There'd be no sleep. Could you handle that? No, you're a little baby. But if there's some big sun change and you have a DNA change and blah, 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 and we go up in some kind of bubbles into the atmosphere, and that's where actually the ascended people live, that may be possible. The truth is, I have seen when I was in training, as people know, I was in some very crazy situations, having been born clairvoyant, where they showed me videos of children levitating. They lie down in the bed and they levitate and they float around a room and they take pictures of them, video pictures of them again and again and again. Thomas Aquinas levitated when he said mass, so much so, and his Reginald Piperno would grab his legs and try to pull him down, but Thomas wouldn't stop. It would take 3-4 hours for him to say mass because he would levitate during part of it. And they finally had to say, Thomas, you can't say mass anymore. He was called the angelic doctor, right? I know I've been given secret teachings by using certain Tibetan letters and spinning them with a certain color on your chakras. It can cause you to levitate or turn invisible. These are all capacities for the human being.
I know, but a note to everyone, I have seen no signs of you levitating.
Yes, I know.
No.
I'm getting fatter every day.
That's right.
Gravity is having its way with me.
That's why we're looking forward to having that body of levitation.
I'm so looking forward to it. Well, my good friend, Ralph Marinelli, proved that the heart is not a pump and that it is, in fact, a vortex momentum booster, which, in fact, is an element of levity. And we have a science of gravity, folks. We need a science of levity. And once you get the science of levity, that you'll understand why all the great masters laugh and laugh and laugh, and they find everything so funny, and they're having such a great time. So when we tell you that you're supposed to work on your arc, that arc is an arc the way you have a new understanding with the etheric. But you couldn't do that unless you'd already tamed your astral body and you knew who your I am really is and that you go from life to life. So it predicates that you know reincarnation and karma. But if you are working at that level, who is to say what will happen when this huge transformation with the sun comes and we reach the end of this sun cycle? What we should be doing is being really humble beings, giving thanks to the sun and previous cultures who tried to teach us this lesson, but we were just too dense to understand it. So folks, the point is ascension can happen for you personally because you might die tomorrow, or it can happen in a slow process, or it may happen in a cataclysmic way. But the point is it's the same exact process. It's just that one is a little slower and one is a little faster.